A new report by the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission has set out evidence of neglect by international oil companies, including Shell and ENI, which has made a huge impact on the environment. And the Commission's dossier, released in London today, estimates the cost of the cleanup in Bayelsa State at $12 billion and will take at least 12 years to fix.
Read this devastating report. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm actually one of the honorary commissioners. So although I didn't do all the trips to Bayelsa that the commissioners did, I have been following this process for 4 years. The commission was set up in 2019, and then of course we had the intervention and the delay as a result of the COVID pandemic. What this report does is give a lot of texture and personal stories to the evidence from the research about the impact in Bayelsa, which is in the Niger Delta, of the work of the oil companies. And you have people's livelihoods have been destroyed over the last 50 years. The incredible and devastating impact in terms of their health. The fact that oil companies are not taking responsibility when there are leakages in the pipes to fix them. Sometimes it takes years. Literally, you have black rain that is falling on people. I mean, respiratory diseases are rife. People can't fish. There are no birds in the vicinity. The land has been devastated. People can't really get food. So as a world and as a society, we are concerned about the environment. We're concerned about climate change. This is part of that mega environmental damage. And my view is that we can do something about it. We have a proposal in the report for a fund, a major remediation fund. People will focus on the figures because it's 12 billion over 12 years. We think the companies that are the polluters should pay for that. But it goes beyond that. We're talking about the Nigerian government putting in place strong regulation. We're talking about people putting a degree of pressure as shareholders on companies like Shell, like Eni in Italy. We're talking about using NGOs and others to continue with the campaign about the impact of all of this. So it's not just about the money, it's about a collective effort for action.
I have a statement from Shell. They say basically we clean up our mess, which is clearly not true.
It's absolutely not true. If you look at the films of what has been happening, if you look at the evidence, there's a lot of research in this report. If you look at the evidence in the report, it is clearly not true. And one of the things that the oil companies have hidden behind is the fact that the legislation in Nigeria that we have, for example, here, which is that the polluter pays, it is not as strong as in other parts of the world. I don't think it's good enough to hide behind that.
Is this your message to the new government in Nigeria? You've got to get tough. After 60 years...
I think the government of Nigeria have got to get tough. I think the government of Bayelsa State have really got to hold their national government accountable, but they also have to do what they can to hold the oil companies accountable. And I think that the oil companies have to stop hiding behind excuses, stop hiding behind the fact that they have local subsidiaries and take responsibility. These are major international organizations, some headquartered here in London, others headquartered elsewhere. If this were happening in Aberdeen, it would not be allowed to go on. Why is it being allowed to go on in Bayelsa?
And John Cookson joins us now from London for more. John, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday. Shell has given you a statement on the allegations. Please give us more depth, even though we heard most of it. Can you give us some more information on that?
Hi guys, yeah, I did get a statement from Shell, the parent company, and basically summarize it up. They say they clean up their own mess, but let's just give them a fair crack of the whip and put this statement out. Shell, the parent company, says that Shell in Nigeria and its local subsidiaries SPDC operates to the same technical standards as other Shell companies globally. Illegal activities continue to inhibit a normal operating environment. This is a reference to pirates and oil smugglers. And the statement goes on. Regardless of the cause of the spill, we clean up and remediate areas affected by spills originating from our facilities. So that's the statement from the global company Shell, based here in London and the Netherlands. And, you know, they're fine words, but no one in Bayelsa State believes any of that. And I'm just wondering, as you may know, Shell is pulling out of the Nigerian operation at the moment, whether they've given up really, trying to make sense of it all. They're facing a $2 billion lawsuit and an action by 13,500 people from the Niger Delta. I think they're perhaps just sort of wringing their hands of it and just putting out these statements saying, whatever we spill, we clean up, when the images that we get and the evidence that we have is that just simply is not happening. Sure, it's a hotbed of smugglers and pirates and local politicians who've got their noses in the trough as well. There's a lot of people making a lot of money down there. But for a major oil company to say that they are cleaning up, it's just patently not true.
All right. Now let's talk about pollution. Now, pollution has been going on in the Niger Delta for decades. Do you think anything will change?
I sense that it might. And the reason why I'm saying that is that I went to an event today outside the Houses of Parliament, and you saw the interview there with Baroness Valerie Amos, and there were other high flyers there, like the governor of Bayelsa State and a couple of local kings, and we'll be running their interviews later on Arise News. Now, all of this has to be paid for by someone, the PR, and there seems to be a momentum now to chime in with the general feeling across the world that major companies like Shell and Eni and Chevron, Texaco, you know, if they make a mess, they have to clear it up, and they also have to pay for it. So, yes, you're right. This has been going on for 60 years, and this story has been rumbling around for that long. But I think that there is a change. The problem that activists will have, though, is that if companies like Shell are pulling out of Nigeria, then they're going to have to move fairly quickly to get their claims through the legal process and also to persuade the companies to pay up. And it's not just Shell. I mean, they're all guilty of spills at one time or another. But what's happened to that region is absolutely devastating. I was speaking to one local leader earlier today, and he says although the average life expectancy in Nigeria is 54, in the Delta, the average life expectancy is just 40 years old. And it's 40 because people are dying from cancer, from lung disease, from toxins. It's just one of the most polluted places on earth.
Indeed, John. Now, still referring to part of what you just mentioned about the timeline that activists would need to, they'd need to act fast, seeing that Shell is looking to pull out. I'm not a legal expert, I'm not sure, but I think that can you tell us more about if Shell pulls out, can they still not be held accountable to, still contribute to this cleanup?
Yes and no. Yes, if the activists act within the legal frameworks, and as far as I know of English law, if they're suing in England, it's between 3 and 6 years, depending on whether you're suing for negligence or nuisance. But beyond that, it becomes statute barred. So anyone who's putting in a claim has to get something in within 3 to 6 years of them suffering whatever they suffered in contracting cancer or something like that. So, and I believe the time limit in Nigeria is 5 years. So there is a limit, but those years, and years can fly by, as we know, does give people an opportunity, a window to actually do something. And all they have to do is to file the writ in a court, and then the time stops running then. Lawyers will give you chapter and verse on this, but that's my understanding of it.
All right. Does this new report by the Bayelsa Commission have an answer to the cleanup question?
Yes, it's the old answer. It's all down to money, and they want Bayelsa wants to organise a fund of $12 billion, and it's a lot of money, of course it is. But to the oil companies, collectively, it's nothing. The Shell and BP and people like that, they're making $8 and $9 billion easily in profit annually. So to find $12 billion and to divide it amongst all the oil companies, and they're not only international oil companies in the Delta, but local Nigerian oil companies, and 12 billion, yes, of course, it's a massive amount of money, but it's doable, I would have thought. But there has to be a convincing of the oil companies that they're due to do that. And it's being done, as far as I can see, through public relations, that people are speaking up now. There is publicity. We're talking about it on a rise. People like Baroness Amos putting her name to these reports. So things seem to be moving.
Well, hopefully things play out in an optimistic note. But we appreciate your time as always. Arise Chief Correspondent John Cookson, thank you for joining us on News.